You're watching part 2 of Clarifying Catholicism's history of the Ecumenical Councils, according to the Catholic Church. Much of this information was gathered from Joseph Kelly's The Ecumenical Councils of the Catholic Church, a history. So if you want an in-depth dive into these topics, make sure to pick up a copy of this book. To see the rest of our episodes, please check our playlist in the description. Without further ado, on to the show. Before we get into the topic of church councils, let's talk about Christian life in the early church. In the past, it's been popular to portray Christians as at odds with Greco-Roman culture. Often they are shown as victims of incredibly violent persecution, which wasn't necessarily the case though. The Romans abided by a motto, peace and taxes. Generally, the only persecuted groups out there were those that refused to, pay their taxes. This is why Jewish and Roman officials got along pretty decently well, though when there were revolts, which happened twice, the Romans certainly brought the hammer down, burning down the temple in Jerusalem in the year 70. Initially, it was the Jews, not the Romans, who persecuted Christians. Romans actually intervened on several occasions to save them. For example, Luke recounts of Paul being saved in Corinth in Acts of the Apostle. The first major widespread persecution was not until the year 250, though there were several smaller ones before. Usually those were caused because Christians were blamed by local villages and cities as responsible for bringing upon droughts or natural disasters because they refused to worship or sacrifice to the pagan gods. So things got a bit rocky in the mid-200s and early 300s, especially when Diocletian launched a massive persecution in 303 when Christians refused to properly participate in pagan rituals. With this historical background in mind, let's look at some of the early councils before Nicea. There are many tales in the New Testament about Jesus' followers meeting every so often to discuss pressing matters, though the first major council was in Jerusalem, probably around the year 50. The big question was, what exactly do we do about Gentiles? Should they be allowed to convert? Should they convert to Judaism first and then become Christian? Should Gentiles need to embrace Jewish customs like circumcision if they converted to Christianity? And this was a pretty major question. Most historical Jesus scholars agree that Jesus primarily preached to the Jews, as seen in Jesus' encounter with the Gentile woman in Matthew, when he tells her that he was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. In fact, most of the apostles likely stuck around Jerusalem and stayed away from pagans. Many focused on preaching only to Jews. That is, except for Paul, the Gentile evangelist. It's Paul who stresses the universality of Jesus' message to all people and spreads it across the Roman Empire. So hopping back to around 50 AD, several high-profile apostles, including James, who was the head of the Jerusalem community, Paul, and Peter, gathered. At this council, Paul presented his argument for why Gentiles should not need to practice Jewish customs like circumcision. After some discussion, the rest of the apostles agreed, and they also agreed to send missionaries to more Gentile countries. After that, local councils convened to decide on matters of importance to their communities, such as the date of Easter. By the end of the 2nd century, 3 major sees, or territories controlled by bishops, emerged as powerhouses that claimed descendants from the original apostles: Antioch, Alexandria, and Rome, the only Western see. As we'll learn about next episode, things soon shifted to larger scale discussions, especially as matters that concerned all of Christianity arose. Until next time, I hope you have a great day. God bless you.